recording. Daniel, do you want to say something before we begin?
For sure, yeah. This will be the third critique class, and we're going to have no lecture period today, I believe, and we're just going to go and look at as many pieces as we can get through during this period.
Yes.
And again, it's going to be anything that's less than 250 words so that it's practical for us to look at in this time frame. Other than that, this is also a place where you can practice giving critique. So in the past, it's only been, just a few of us giving critique, but I would also recommend you not just to go ahead and give your piece, but also practice giving remarks to people.
Yes, I actually plan at the end of the class to ask questions specifically to Daniel and Elaine and anyone else who will wish to answer about getting critiqued. And also for next week, anyone who will wish to get a poem critiqued will have to leave by Wednesday a written comment as critique on someone else's poem. So, because I believe that giving critique is very helpful, and we are going to push you out of your boundaries. Okay, so who wants to share their poem first?
I know that we had Hazim, maybe, Pingsess, Live Russian were the ones that had mentioned.
So, yeah, if you want to get critiqued, I propose that you are prepared to have a link ready. So, when we ask someone to share, you could just put the link in rather than
I've been asking for the past 10 minutes before you got here to get people ready. So.
Live Russian is first with a poem called A Secret. By the way, I'm going to use this opportunity to give you a bit of a suggestion regarding rewards on Steemit. Do not pick the 100% power up so long as SBD is worth over $1, because you lose somewhere between 50 to 70% of your potential Steam power. You should pick the 50-50 reward split. Okay?
Okay, I didn't know.
Yes. Okay, Daniel, do you want to read this poem?
Oh, may I read it myself?
Yeah, of course.
It's just I have my microphone today.
For a change. Okay, take it away.
Okay, enjoy my Russian accent.
We are waiting on you, Live Russian.
You can't hear me because I forgot to push. Push to talk.
Okay.
So I start over. I'm sorry. A secret. I kept asking my mom today. Curiosity couldn't be hidden. Give the secret to me away of the power by which you are driven. You can cure all the aching spots with a kiss and a cheerful laughter. Lullabies having your sweet voice calm me down when it gets darker. In the world of my Barbie dolls, you are sure a top-notch designer, and the crime of lost pair of socks solved by no one but you, my darling. She just said that one day I too will be given this superpower. When find out that now we're two, there is no lonely desert flower. Thanks.
Thank you. And now we are going to take a minute to read it quietly, because some people like myself need to read rather than hear to get it all in. Okay, who wants to go first?
I'll go first just to address some basic things.
Yes.
And by the way, I want to just applaud Live Russian for being so brave to do this, as she's so new to writing poetry and English is not her first language. And I do want to say that in this case, I feel that by being willing to have her pieces looked at, it's going to improve way faster, because I've seen poets that have English not as their first language that never hear the feedback of, okay, this is ungrammatical, this is etc. And although they're quite good writers, they still make many mistakes. So props to you for being willing to do that. So I'm just going to address those things first. Where was it? The first stanza is really good. I personally like this hidden. Okay, you can cure all the aching spots with a kiss and a cheerful. Actually, a cheerful laughter is not something that is really said. I would say with a kiss and some cheerful laughter, most likely.
I would just cut the A myself.
Or with a kiss and cheerful laughter. Either way you want the flow to go. The other one was, and the crime of a lost pair of socks, maybe? Or the or a, depending on what you're going for. I think to fit the whimsical thing, what you're going for is the crime of a lost pair of socks.
Really?
In any case.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I really think that I hate the filler A's and whatever.
That's not
Well,
a filler.
and-
It would be grammatically incorrect to not have it here. Do you have...
in the context of this, I would put something there. I know about filler, but I won't. Proper sounding English. And by the way, guys, there's some like static mic that comes in intermittently.
Okay, let me use it until I need to.
I think that's all I saw on the nuts and bolts. Otherwise, I really like the fact that you were, it was very cohesive. You knew what you were trying to address, and I really like the kind of a very light tone that you had throughout. I think I would need more time to give other type of feedback. I just want to address those two little spots that I saw, just English grammar wise.
Okay, anyone else wants to talk? To have a go at critiquing this piece?
The only thing that I saw was that the in the same one that we were just talking about, what is it with the socks, that the darling doesn't rhyme with the designer. Like everything else rhymes in the poem, but like here, solved by no one but you, my darling, and like it does not rhyme with the designer, and I'm not quite sure what she could have put in there to make it like, but the rest of it rhymes. So I'm not sure if this is, if this, it sort of like bothered me, but it might just be me because I get so linear sometimes when it comes to rhyming, but that's like the only thing I saw. Everything else, her first efforts, I really think are brilliant. She shows so much natural talent that, I really think that a lot of the other stuff she'll learn from you guys that are more like prolific when it comes to grammar and stuff like that.
Thank you, Tiger. Anyone else? Maybe something about a bit more holistic from the impressionistic approach? Elaine, perhaps? Elaine is typing for those only listening in. Okay, so unless someone else wants to have a go at it, I will go over it.
I can say a little bit something.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Okay. One thing I really liked was the balance of the mother bringing the brightness as well as quelling the darkness, which seem like they're the same thing, but they're actually two different kind of facets. So that was really interesting how in the first half of the stanza, like on stanza 2, well, I guess it's talking about the aching spots, but the focus is on kind of the kiss and the cheerful laughter, while I feel like the focus on the second half is when it gets darker. And same thing on the third stanza, you have the crime of the lost pair of socks in the second half, whereas the first half is more focused on just, Barbie dolls, something purely fun. So I thought that was a cool way of structuring it.
Okay, my turn. I will go from the not so good to the good. Actually, there's a bit of a rhyming problem in this piece as a whole, not just in the third stanza. The first and the last stanzas are both A, B, A, B, today away hidden driven, to power flower. The third stanza only rhymes on the second and the fourth lines, and the third stanza doesn't rhyme at all, and that's something that you should fix, including the fact that the second stanza only rhymes in one part, because it stands out. The second stanza I feel should be put inside the quotation marks, because it's part of what the daughter is telling her mother, but you can opt not to, as if this is what she's thinking, in which case you still need a period at the end of the first stanza. The word darling stood out to me a bit because usually an older person uses that term on a younger person. A daughter is unlikely to use it on her mother, though Tiger might tell me that I'm wrong, which would be fine, but that is what I know. Like, my dear, my darling, you say that as the adult, not as the child. The crime of a lost pair of socks was a really good image. I really liked it. I really like that. Like, you could read it when find out that now we're two. You could imagine it to be like someone who is now in a relationship, but it's clear that in the context, especially with the image you chose, that it's about children, a mother and a child. This is also actually something that came up last week. I feel that you should make sure that the image you wish to convey for your poem can be understood even without an image, because even though an image is an important part when you use it as well, in case your poetry ever gets republished elsewhere, it will likely be without the image. So you have to make sure that it works. She just said that one day I too will be given the superpower and find out that now we're two. Nexeli, you're picking up a lot of sounds, I'm muting you. When I find out that now we're two, for instance, there's a bit of a grammatical issue there at the penultimate line of a poem, but I actually think that this is a very sweet poem about the magical nature of mothers and the secret powers that you will one day find out. So I think this is a good poem. And yeah, I would recommend simply that you find like someone to give you grammatical feedback before you publish the poems, and it'd be pretty great. Do you want to say something, Live Russian?
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Especially this grammatical stuff is difficult for me. And yeah, we'll do this. This is a good advice to show it to my American friends before. I just didn't dare to. And yeah, darling, it was really difficult for me as well. I struggled with this line, honestly. So that's all.
Okay. Thank you, Live Russian. Who wants to be next? Whoever, first come, first serve. Whoever gets the link Outward first. Okay, Hazem, do you wish to read it or do you wish for us to read it for you? Okay, Daniel, you're up.
Okay. This is I Wish I Learned by Hazem. Let me look over it for just one sec, and then I'll read it. Okay. This is I Wish I Learned by Hazem. I wish my eyes learned how to cry. I wish my heart learned how to love. But no matter how hard I try, feelings are difficult to have. To be human sounds hard for me. Why can't I be happy or sad? They say life's real. I cannot see what's nice in it, nor what is bad. Something is missing. What could it be? Something is lost, and I can't tell if I am ever breaking free from my cold, emotional cell where I've lived, where I grew. What and where could be the key? I wish I learned, I wish I knew, whether we all do, or it's just me.
And now we're going to take 1 minute to read it quietly. Okay, who wants to have a first go? Tiger, do you want to be first?
No.
Daniel?
Yeah, I can go. I
Go
was
ahead.
trying to make sure that I was correct with saying this. However, first I wanted to state that this is, to me, one of your stronger pieces that I've read, so good job. And I think you're really kind of refining your whole approach, and you still have the whole approach of being very clear in the message you're trying to convey. However, I'm not sure about the title, I Wish I Learned, because it seems like the focus is more on not something learned, but more something innate. But anyway, that's just an aside. It might actually make sense for how you mean it. And then the other thing I was just going to say, I might recommend to lay this out in quatrains, like divide them in line breaks, because really most of them are thought. Trying to see was there are some areas where you could justify having them not have a break because the thought actually continues to the next 4 lines, but the first 4 lines are a very complete thought. And just to be a stickler, love and have don't rhyme, but it's a slant rhyme, I suppose. The next 4 are a complete thought, and then after that, let's see, it does kind of bleed together when it says, from my cold emotional cell where I've lived. That is a continuation of a sentence, so you could choose if that was broken or not. And of course you can choose to have it in one whole block like this, but I personally wouldn't recommend it for this type of poem because it just is more pleasing to the reader, it's more clear to the reader, and it's, yeah. The other thing I was just going to say on the nuts and bolts is where you had the double hyphens. I would just recommend using an M dash. I mentioned that to Steve the other day, and I'll drop you a link where you can. It's a resource where you can get all three dashes. There's the hyphen, the N dash, the M dash, really what. And grammatically, on using the M dash, there's notes, just as you did here with the hyphens, there's no space on either side of it. So I meant to mention that to Steve because a lot of people think that when you use the longer dash, you actually need to space it out, but you don't. Other than that, I was impressed with, like, this poem was very clear, and I say that as a compliment. And I like your style because it's like it's very light and easy to digest. At the same time, you're addressing, kind of deeper aspects. Why do I feel so unemotionless? And kind of wondering, am I the only one that feels this way? Because of maybe how things are portrayed in art and literature, and you're seeing all of these things that are all romantic, and you're wondering, is it really like that in life? So I did really like the piece, and that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Daniel. Anyone else wants to go? Well, I have to say, Daniel, that I like my space at least before the M dash. He didn't space it, but I actually do prefer the spacing. It just looks unclean.
You prefer the spacing on the M dash?
Yeah, at least on one side.
Really?
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
person. So anyone else wants to say something? Tiger said in chat that she agreed with Daniel that it's the best poem of Hazem's she has read thus far. I guess we still don't have Elaine, and I guess everyone here is being shy. So I will go. If someone else wants to speak, this is your chance. Or hold your silence forever, as we say. Okay, first of all, as I read the poem, I definitely felt that there should be stanza breaks. Not necessarily, like, I don't know how many, but definitely after the first 4 lines, and then after the second 4 lines, I could see the other segment being as a block, but it just felt wrong to not have them. Not only are these complete thoughts, but it does. I know it's only looks, but it is also easier to read. The line "from a cold emotional cell" doesn't begin with a capital letter, and you should do it because even prior to it, you sometimes had skipping lines without a comma, but then the next one started with a capital letters. And yes, Pink says stanzas can be any length. Like this is, we are writing 3 verse. So long you, Pink says is asking, can the stanzas be uneven? So long you are writing 3 verse, you can do whatever you wish. There's the line with bad. What's nice in it, nor what is bad. That line specifically, the rhyme felt forced, what we call rhyme-led. I don't know what we could switch it for. Maybe the word tad, like a tad, which means a bit. But the bad here is the sentence felt like it was.
Guy, your mic is breaking up. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
What was the last thing you heard?
Bad, and then you went away.
Okay, so bad feels as if it is rhyme-led. You could perhaps switch it with tad, which means a bit, because the whole sentence feels as if it was warped to fit in the word bad. The last line, whether we all do, I think in the second part you need to have whether or if or another word or whether it is just me. That's also an instance I would not write it's in the contracted form because you want to stress that. On the more holistic sense, like I feel closeness to this poem because I too for many years had a limited range of emotions. I think I was never happy and I was never actually sad. And over time, I've worked it. Um, to be human sounds hard. It's supposed to be to me, not for me. It sounds hard to me, but it, you raise a question here that you might need to actually explore a bit more, which is why being happy or sad is part of being human. Like animals can also be happy and sad, and they aren't humans. They say life's real, like even here, even if something is not real, you can see what is nice in it or why it is bad, like in art. So I feel like this poem in particular needs actually more room. You like it feels like the beginning part of a larger piece because you don't actually explore what life is like not feeling or why it is you want to feel beyond being told that you should. I, that you should. There isn't actually like you don't actually describe why what is a cell. Like you basically you tell us that it is bad. You tell us that you feel imprisoned, but you don't tell us why. I feel that this piece actually should be made longer because this is half an idea. This is only the preamble. And I will finish by saying that I agree with Daniel that the title should be I Wish I Knew, especially because that's how you finish how you finish the poem. I feel it would be a better fit. Okay. Hazem, do you want to reply? Okay, Hazem said that he does not wish to reply now. Who wants to share their poem next? Yes, next piece. Well done, Capo. You could wait a bit because you hadn't been here since the beginning of the class. And this is specifically the critique class, so I will give Pinksess an opportunity to share her poem first, and if she isn't, then we'll go over yours. Okay, Pinksess, do you want to read your poem, or should we read it for you? No harm done, Don Capo. Just be patient and we'll get to you next. Okay. Elaine, do you want to read Pinksess's poem? Welcome back, Steve.
Yeah, just 1 second. I'm going to read through it real quick.
That's not even a whipcrack, Tiger. That's just a friendly chiding. The most gentle of chiding. No hiding. Ooh, that's a bit of a longer piece. I'm going to check its length 1 second because I want to make sure that it's not just under 243 words. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to do my best with the pauses for the punctuation. But this piece is called Golden Hours. It is written by Pinksess, and you can read along with me. The piece is posted in the Steemitschool live class chat channel. A note to Sun. Looking back at all that I've done, some made me laugh, but most made me cry. I had no regrets with all the mistakes I had, but I feel sad for those I didn't when I had a chance. I didn't live my life to the fullest, but I have done everything I thought I should do, not just for myself, but for my family. for you. You're so dear to me. If I can only buy more time, I will be banking happy memories with my loved ones. Collecting dimes are not bad, but all dimes you have will not matter when your time has come. I wish I have known it earlier. Value of time was taken for granted. Now I'll be leaving with almost empty-handed, aside from those good memories I vividly remember. Hope this serves as a lesson for you. Give importance to time that was given to you. Do the things you want if you're given a chance, so no regrets when you look back. As I close my curtain, I am fulfilled. I know you have better future, though I'm away. I worked hard for that good living, and now I will be leaving at peace. Dear son, please don't cry. You've nothing to worry. Everything will be all right. It is time for me to rest, but I have one last request. To see you all smile until I close my eyes. I love you.
And now we'll take a minute to read it in quiet. Okay. I'm actually going to go over all the grammatical issues first because there are quite a few and I want to get them out of the way. But in general, Pink says I strongly recommend that you find an editor or a beta reader, someone who is a native English speaker, and have them go over your pieces before you publish them, because there are a lot of grammatical issues. But again, like, I know you're not speaking English as your first language, so it's understandable, but as a suggestion, you should actually do that, because also the class, like, I don't want for us to get bogged down on numerous grammatical issues. Okay, looking back to all that I've done, Elaine has read that as a at, but it's a different meaning either way. At means that you are looking at it. To fits in the sense that you are looking back to it. Some made me laugh. Should probably some of it. I have no regrets with all the mistakes I've made. You make mistakes. I didn't leave my laptop. I should do. Okay. I'm going to give a bit of more editing critique while we're at it. In the first stanza, but for my family, for you, honestly, you should have finished the stanza there. You're so dear to me doesn't actually add anything. When you finish the stanza with for you, it's quite clear. We actually spoke of it 2 weeks ago when we've gone over your piece from that time. You should stop using the ellipses. The ellipses are the free periods. Like, if your idea is clear, finish it with a period. Like, the free periods, leave it hanging, and in general, it's not a good way to write. It's a mark of weakness in the writing. If I could only buy more time, collecting dimes is not bad, are not bad, but that sentence is a bit awkward anyway. I wish the value of time was taken for granted, or I took time for granted, would flow better. Now I'll be leaving almost empty-handed, not with. Vividly memories remember, like you obviously remember memories. So I would cut one of those or switch them to experiences I vividly remember, for instance. I worked hard for that good living feels again a bit weird. For the good living we've had or something, I don't know, but like that sentence is a bit awkward. You have nothing to worry about, because worry without the about means that you shake something, like a dog worries a bone, although that is not commonly used in English anymore. Okay, but yeah, especially like in the last two lines, those ellipses are just absolutely killing the stanza and not in a good way. What didn't you know, Depend? Yeah, to answer Live Russian about collecting dimes is not bad, because it is about collecting. Collecting is, not are. Worry for shaking. Daniel didn't know that. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to give other people an opportunity to speak about this poem, and I'll conclude last speaking about the holistic sense. Who wants to go? Elaine?
Yeah, for me, I think what Guy said at the top, I just want to reiterate that if you bring this poem to places like, I'm going to say Isle of Wight because that's one that I use, but any of those poetic or literature-based communities here at Steem, and let people give it a read through and put their edits on a Google document beforehand, it'll help you a lot with the grammar, just to see what native English speakers, how they would say some of the things that you're trying to say, because a lot of the thoughts here, while ones that have been explored a lot in poetry and in literature, they're very clear. You do have a linear narrative here that I think would really benefit from, like, all your thoughts are right, just the grammar of a native speaker would really help get you a little bit more clarity, and hopefully give you a good opportunity to kind of work on not just what sounds right, but what, how a native speaker would approach it. The other thing that I wanted to note was sometimes you have slant rhyme, or sometimes you have end rhymes and sometimes you don't. And it actually, as a reader, reading it out loud especially, throws me off a little bit, because it creates a rhythm or a cadence that then is not there for the rest of the piece. So some examples would be like, halfway through you have granted and handed, which are in somewhat of a meter, and then you don't go back to end rhyme until later. You have something about, it's the rest request, which is a very like hard end rhyme. My advice to you would be, if you're going to have end rhymes, have end rhymes. If you're not, then just be careful about having things that sound that way with your line breaks in poetry, when they're because I think it can distract from your thoughts and can distract from your message. Would be my advice for how you use rhyming when you're not implicitly setting a rhyme. The other thing that this poem, as a reader, would really benefit from, there's times where you use your punctuation, like commas and things, really well in this piece, which as a reader is really appreciative, because it tells me where to pause. The problems with the fact that you do use them really well, or the flip side of that, is that there's times where it does need punctuation to tell the reader where to pause, and it's not there, and it forces some of your lines to go on longer than you want. The great thing with things like commas, if you had like, let me find a really good example. So you have the, if I can only buy more time, I will be banking happy memories with my loved ones. Collecting dimes are not bad, but all dimes you have will not matter. Now the first two lines are one kind of segment of thought, and then your second two lines are a different segment of thought. And if you separated those with a comma after the end of that second line, then it allows people to have a little bit more, I think, as a reader, a little bit more time to separate those thoughts and see the value of each of them. Which for me, I thought the collecting dimes are not bad, but all dimes you have will not matter was one of the stronger kind of pieces of symbolism you have in the piece and imagery you have in the piece. So I would have liked having that comma beforehand. So when I take that pause from that last thought and start into the collecting dimes thought, I could really feel the weight and the gravity of it, if that makes sense to you. Yeah, those are my quick thoughts.
Before you go, Elaine, I have a question. I like you paused upon granted and handed, even assuming like the rhyme for you, like sometimes because it's not the first two lines, I feel you can have accidental or incidental rhymes, you know? So like if it were like in the first two lines, then I think it's bad to set up a rhyme, but I think it's okay to set up a rhyme, to not set up a rhyme and sometimes just have it.
I agree with you. There was just a couple instances of that, and I think that part of that is because this is a longer piece and it's difficult to, not have any of that.
Yes.
But I think most of it, when I was reading through those lines, are probably rooted in the fact that Pinksas usually writes rhyming poetry, and thus her mind trends that way. And I think there's better ways of saying those statements without having those end rhymes that don't create the rhythm that would distract a reader from the thoughts, because this is a free verse piece. So I think that your main focus is on your thoughts of this letter. And there's just a couple times where as a reader, I felt distracted. And that doesn't mean everybody would, but that was just me personally.
And before I let you say something, Daniel, I just forgot. I would also recommend avoiding exclamation marks in poetry. Like if your words should be the one that resound, that resonate, that exclaim. If you have to add an exclamation mark, I personally feel like that as a poet you should go back and use stronger words. Okay, Daniel, what do you want to say?
Yeah, before saying other things, I just saying, because I think it's interesting, and what I wanted to basically
Daniel, you keep cutting out. You keep cutting out.
How is it now? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say that in these situations where there's dental rhymes, am I still cutting out, by the way?
A bit.
Okay. I'm not sure if I can improve that at the moment. Let me have someone else speak maybe, and let me see if I can fix it.
Okay, Steve.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Tiger.
Okay. I'm looking at this whole piece, and I like the sentiment of it, but as everyone else noted, there is a lot of problems with grammar that the people have spoken on the grammar. What I also see some imagery problems, but I think it has to do with language barrier. When I'm looking at that, the first stanza seems, it mostly, is straightforward. Although I'm not sure I would have. I have the feeling like looking back at all I've done, some made me laugh, but most made me cry. I might have said it a little bit differently because I'm not sure that, the deed itself, sort of like the sum with the deed, I can't really put the finger on why it feels weird, but it just feels a little weird to me. The second stanza is the one that really sort of trips me up like completely, because I'm not quite sure what you're trying to say. I had no regrets with all the mistakes I had, but I feel sad for those I didn't when I had a chance. And I'm sort of thinking that you might have been trying to say that that you had no regrets at the time that you were doing these things.
I actually if I could say, I actually read her as if saying she's happy even for the mistakes she has made, but she is unhappy about mistakes she hadn't made because she withdrew.
Okay. All right. That's a way of seeing it, I guess. So she was happy for not making unhappy about not making some mistakes she should have been making in her. Okay. Okay. That makes sense then. All right. I didn't live my life to the fullest. My family for you, dear to me. Actually, I think I should. I'd rather actually. I'm not quite sure how I can be of service here. Like, just rattling it down, because I'd have to go through it with you every sentence. Would you be open to you and me doing this over PM at some point, Princess? Because I'd like to actually work on editing this with you. But I feel like, I'm looking at this stuff, but I'm noticing that it's like sort of that I'm analyzing it more of an emotional level, and it's very hard to explain the emotions, rationally so that people can understand it. So I'm not going to drive people insane with it.
Okay, so Tiger will help Princess if Princess wishes to later. Daniel, do you want to have another go?
Yeah, for sure. And I think there are just maybe some Discord issues right now because Tiger was cutting out for me.
She didn't.
Hopefully this is better. Okay. In any case, I wanted to address the topic of accidental rhymes or rhymes occurring in the context of a non-rhyming piece. And I think much of this is based on aesthetics because, for instance, Guy, you were saying this didn't bother you much. Elaine was saying it did for him. And I'll tell you that being someone that writes a lot of rhymes in the context of writing rap and sometimes writing rhyme poetry or ending a piece on a rhyme purposefully, I also am oftentimes very bothered when it's accidental or in a random position, and I do everything to avoid it. Like, people will be very surprised if they hear this. Like, that there'll be a rhyme that actually makes total sense. It's not rhyme-led. It seems perfect, but I don't want it to rhyme, so I'll rephrase it so it doesn't land at the end of the phrase. So just know that if you would like, you can experiment with doing. Okay, but in that sentence, unless I missed you mentioning it, because you may have, because yeah, there are a lot of issues all throughout this that need to just be looked at beforehand, and one-on-one will help. So thanks, Tiger, for volunteering to do that. But on that phrase, I'll be leaving with almost empty-handed, that needs reworked. I'll be leaving almost empty-handed, or you could say I'll be leaving with nearly empty hands. But you could also, if you wanted to avoid this rhyme, depending on what you like, you can say value of time was taken for granted. Actually, I forget what it was now, but it was just putting hands earlier. Now I'll be leaving with hands nearly empty. You can switch the order of it, ways like that. This piece I did. One reason why I love looking at people that have language barriers or more beginner with English poetry is I do want to say that I felt that the strong emotion that you were attempting to convey did come across, especially in the last stanza, because this is very raw emotion that I think anyone can relate to, whether you're a son or a mother or something else. The biggest thing that bothered me punctuation wise was just all of these. I see what you were wanting to do with these ellipses, which is the group of 3 dots. And I was feeling like I would like to tell you to just remove them. However, I do see what you're trying to do with them, because they do convey a very, very much of a sense of like there being things removed, that there's a lot of space, that there's a lot of almost uncertainty as to how to express these things. But even seeing with that you're trying to do that with them, even if that's the effect you're trying to achieve, they're used far too often in the piece. I mean, they must occur, 15 or 20 times. So even if you're trying to create that kind of effect with the ellipses, then they need to be placed very mindfully instead of at the end of every stanza. And actually, I would recommend just not using them for the most part. Periods will work better. I also agree that being someone that's tried to use exclamations in poetry, it's only really useful very uncommonly, which was to my surprise. You'd think that, oh, why can't I use an exclamation if I can use other punctuation? It's hard to, I don't think I can explain why it's awkward within poetry for the most part, unless it's having an overly humorous kind of joke effect. But it's better to just let the words actually speak. And you'll notice that when Alain was reciting this, when he got to the end, I love you seemed more, in the context of this piece, it seemed more somber, not as much of an exclamation anyway. So I would definitely remove the one at the end. Other than that, yeah, I applaud you for kind of being experimental with different line lengths, different amounts of lines in the stanzas. I think you're definitely on the right track towards and getting outside of purely rhyming poetry. So I think that's all I had to say.
Anyone else wishes to say something? But while you guys decide, I will say, like, the problem with an exclamation mark is simply that it is a case of telling rather than showing. It is an admittance to failure, basically. Like, it just boils down to that. There's nothing more to say. Okay, so I will say, like, holistically, I really liked the idea of how you took the buying time, how you then took the dimes as if like collecting memories, collecting dimes, and no matter how, and also contrasting it with physical money, that no matter how rich you are, it doesn't matter by the time you're dead. So what you wish to bank are happy memories. Like, I thought that was the best part of the entire poem. The rest of it was nice, but its ideas I've seen before. Like that's not a negative thing. Most ideas have been seen before, and I really think that if we didn't have grammatical issues, we could have enjoyed this poem more. Like, it gives a complete idea. It has a start, like it has a narrative of how you've made mistakes, but they've still given you memories, and you value those memories, and you wish your son to know that he too should focus on making memories, to not waste his time. So I feel this is a complete and nice piece. Do you want to reply, Pinkses, before we move on? And let's see what Alain wrote. Again, Pink says, I think your thoughts and the amount of emotion you try to build for your narratives are your strength. You're getting better with every piece. I loved the dime stanza and the thoughts you conveyed through that narrative. And Alain, that's why we have a voice chat, so you could just say these things out loud. Bad boy, Alain. Bad boy, Alain.
What I really love about these classes is that it actually teaches me grammar, because while I sometimes am actually grammatically correct, it's more just intuition.
Hi, Tiger.
Like everything I do is like it's intuition than anything really knowing what I'm doing, and I'm learning here the actual mechanics of what actually I'm doing.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I've found that non-native English speakers usually have better grammar than native English speakers, because we actually learn English by the rules rather than growing up thinking we know how things should sound.
Okay. English is my third language, love.
Well, in general, but yeah, like it is still something I've found to be true. Okay, so Princess is saying that she will come and get critique at the aisle. She's just been busy lately. Well, yes, we know how it happens. Okay, Don Capo, are you here? Okay, share your poem, please, if you wish us to go over it. Well, Live Russian, we can talk about it later, or you can PM Alain, and he will tell you all about it. Okay, so Alain, do you want to read Don Capo's poem?
Just give me one quick minute.
By the way, Princess, this is entirely a matter of taste, but I am a big believer in not centering one's poetry. I just think it looks better. Not like this. Oh, that's a poem from 6 months ago. Okay.
Okay, this poem is Lotus by Don Capo.
And
I'm reading it in the...
Yeah, and just don't vote for it because it's 6 months old, okay? Everyone.
No one vote. Which is a very anti-American sentiment. This is the Steemitschool Live class channel, and if you'd like to read along, please go there. The piece is in the chat. This is called Lotus. This devil inside me never let go, not ever will until I blow. All the metaphors are self-related, my environment more and more hated. Looking into future like it's here, trying to hear this whisper in my ear. Something prevents my soul. Don't know if it's heart ending in the black hole. It is probably her eyes in the moon that will call for me soon. I had a dream that I was floating in the sky, like a bird very high. Could see assassin walking down the road. I didn't pay attention. I knew it was just a code. I had a wish to take me away, 'cause I knew it was not my way. Someday maybe I will take care, and not only be sitting in the chair. More of them will notice special beauty in metaphor of this lotus.
Okay, we are going to take a minute to read it on our own, and then again I will go over the grammatical issues first. By the way, Don Capo, which language is your mother tongue? Please write it in the chat, because I'm curious. Okay, so Don Capo's native tongue is Croatian, and no, your English. And I'm going to go over the grammar first. This devil inside me never lets go, nor ever will he until I blow. You need a period after the blow. All the metaphors are self-related. I would have a dash between the self and related. Looking into the future, like it's here, you need an apostrophe inside the it's because it is a contraction for it is. Something prevents my soul is not actually a sentence because it is preventing your soul from doing something. It's heart ending, again missing the apostrophe in the contraction. Heart ending should probably be dashed again. Like could see an assassin walking down the road. The cause with a contraction, because the rest of this poem is not very colloquial in its language, should be because, and not only be sitting in the chair is very awkwardly written. Special beauty in the metaphor of this lotus, not you're missing that as well. Before I give other people the opportunity to speak of a more holistic sense, there are a lot of very rhyme-led lines in this poem. My environment, more and more hated, is a bit but specifically like a bird very high. Aside from it, is extremely rhyme-led. The line with I didn't pay attention, I knew it was just a code, also stands out very much. Away and way is what I call a cheating rhyme, and it's Notice and Lotus don't rhyme at the end, but maybe that's on purpose to draw attention to actually draw attention to these two lines. So I think that bit is fine, but the rhymes are too forced in this piece, aside from all the grammar issues. Okay, who wants to go first?
I can go. And by the way, I wanted to mention something that you may not have known if you weren't here before. We do ask that you don't reply really while we're going over your piece, because if you're new to critique especially, there's a tendency to want to kind of defend every sort of comment that you hear, but it's better to just kind of wait for a second and think on the comments, and then we'll give you a chance to reply to what we're saying afterwards. And it's also important because one of the points of this is for us to look at the piece as it is, not to hear your explanation of why it is what it is yet, because we're just looking at how the piece is itself and how well it seemed to kind of convey the thoughts you were going for without knowing your intention. Basically, we're just trying to get that from the piece, and then at the end we'll get your comments. Guy went over a lot of the things that were just nuts and bolts that I noticed. Actually, with the metaphor of the lotus, I kind of felt like it felt a bit contrived, just because I didn't notice anything that had to do with the lotus throughout the piece, other than the fact that it was the title and the ending. So it seems like it was thrown at the beginning and the end, but the piece itself didn't seem to pertain to the lotus, or at least I couldn't tell how it was related to the lotus. Or exactly, of course, the lotus is known to be kind of a representation of beauty growing out of the density and the kind of ugliness of the world, because it grows from the bottom of the sludge of a pond. But I just couldn't tell how it was kind of related to the piece. I do like the phrase, her eyes in the moon. That one was a bit intriguing, for sure. I also agreed that the line, like a bird very high, seemed very just trying to rhyme with sky. And as well, do want to underscore that to rhyme way with way, like away and my way, actually putting the same word is not considered as a rhyme. A rhyme is when it's something similar, the same sound, but not the exact same sound. And I agree on knew it was just a code line. That seems like it was just rhyming. I couldn't tell what you meant by that, unless you were kind of referring to the code of law, like the law of harshness of the world. I could see that perhaps. Yeah, I think that's all I had for now.
My thought before I will let Alain speak, because I know he wants to, I felt like that if the Ming was with the assassin, that seeing the assassin was a question of a code, but yeah, it still felt loose. Alain, do you want to speak, right?
Yeah, I think most of what I would say was covered by Daniel and Guy. I think that this is a piece where your message probably got lost a bit in your efforts to rhyme, which is kind of what people have been highlighting the most, and I think is the most pertinent. Similar to Daniel, I did not catch how the Lotus metaphor was tied into this piece. And especially when something's your last line and you really want it to leave an impression on the reader, it fell flat in this instance because I just didn't figure out where it tied in to kind of the rest of the messaging. I think for some of these, like there's some really interesting things. I like the line breaks that kind of break up your reader's thoughts, but add to kind of what you're building. An example being your line 2 to 3, not ever will until I blow, all the metaphors are self-related. It feels like a line break that's continuing your thought, not just because of the lack of punctuation there, but and I thought that was cool. And there's a couple, I think one other instance somewhere where I enjoyed that. So there's like bits and pieces in here that I think are good examples of where you might find your strengths. It is difficult, similar to Pink Cessa's piece, just because the grammar from a native speaker perspective trips you up as you read. But the other thing too is for me, this is more my personal vendetta, but there's a lot of it's here as kind of words that you're using as kind of fillers, which I don't always know what they're referring to. And I think that lost me a little bit when I'm trying to follow some of your trains of thought as well. But yeah, I think that I would love to see kind of like a more linear tie-in of the Lotus, especially with it being the title and the last line, through the whole piece, so that you kind of get this the extended metaphor that you're looking for.
Before I go, anyone else wants to have a go? Steve-O, perhaps? Because he is here after he left us for a while.
I have been working, so I haven't been able to catch everything to comment, but thanks.
Okay, and no, Lotus and Notice don't rhyme, if you ask me. Like Lotus, Notice.
I'll just say for me, Lotus is how I would pronounce that. So it's Lotus, Notice. But that could just be an American pronunciation. Yeah, what Daniel said.
Okay, so I'm going to go over this piece to answer, and I think it's important to note that it is me answering and I'm not the poet, because I like finding meaning in things. If I had on the bad side, I think that the word Lotus is used, and then we have assassin and ice in the moon, so it gives the image of sort of Orientalism and sort of like almost like a dream, like it calls out to Indian and Hindu and Buddhist thoughts, but I don't think it does so deeply enough. On the good side, you can look at the Lotus as something that has to be unraveled, so you have to actually carefully unpack it and look past all the empty metaphors, all the cheating metaphors, that you unpack your own soul and things of that sort, that it has to be soft, the whispers in my ear. But if I had to go about it a bit, part of the message that we are telling you is that the metaphors in this piece are clunky and don't add up. You should actually try to not use too many metaphors. It's much better to use one extend metaphor or a couple and slowly unpack and extend them. So the obvious metaphor with the lotus here would be its leaves opening and you diving deeper and deeper inside. So if you were, say, coming to me while you were writing the piece and I were like a workshop runner, that would be my feedback to you. Aside from all the grammatical issues, which is, I think, just small because it's easily fixable. Okay, Don Capo, if you want to reply a bit, you can. But thanks to Daniel who spoke earlier, one of the things I spoke of last week is that an explanation is not an excuse. Explaining to us why you did something as a reader doesn't necessarily mean it's fine. By the way, Tiger, while we're waiting for Don Capo to write, what is your mother tongue?
I learned French first, then German, then English. But I don't speak French as well as I used. German became predominant.
What age did you start playing English in?
I was probably 3.
So I think we can consider it your mother tongue at that age.
No, because I left America and didn't a long time then. So it's like I left with 7, went back to Germany. My mother married. Basically, she married like 7 times, and we moved everywhere. So it's a little complicated.
If it makes you feel better, I started learning English in the 4th grade. Okay, Don Capo is still typing, and for those who are only listening at home, there was a bit of a question here. Daniel asked, doesn't Lotus and Notice rhyme though? At least we do in American pronunciation. And Elaine agrees with Daniel, but Tiger and I disagree. But that's the danger of rhymes, that they are a bit territorial based.
But when it comes to my formal education, love, I'm missing classes. Like I went to 1st grade 3 times, and then I missed 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade completely. And then it's like, so like my formal education is a bloody mess.
Okay. While Don Capo is still writing, I think he is still writing. Daniel wants to ask me about Shakespeare rhyming love and prove. I think that's a bit hard because I did not live at the time, Daniel. And, you know, that's the answer. Okay, Don Capo, if you will have an answer, we'll read it. Does anyone else have a poem they wish for us to go over? Even if
His answer is on the top.
What?
His answer is a little bit further up.
Okay, I missed it. Sorry. Don Capo has said, thank you all. There is one metaphor in the poem, and Lotus is used as mutual understanding symbol of everything we do in life, no matter what it is, because if there is no understanding, we will never know anything but what we see. And if we can't understand what we see, then that's even harsher. So to answer Elaine, who asked if I'm not immortal, even if one has not been alive since the start of time, one can still be immortal because they will not die. And Daniel, we try not to speak about that. Okay, so anyone else has a poem they want us to critique? Note Stephen, because you joined late, this is Critique Thursday. This is not for us to just read your poem. If you put a poem forth, we will critique it. And I don't take prisoners. Tiger, you have a poem that you want to share?
No, I have one just as emergency, but let everyone else do.
Okay. There are no emergencies. We still have actually things to talk about.
Good. then because mine is just seriously a fillers.
Okay. And Alain doesn't work this way, so he probably doesn't want to share. Alain likes...
But
Yes, Tiger?
I was just to answer Daniel's question, because I think you probably would know that. Isn't prove like Old English? That's why he may have done love and prove in it, but I'm not quite sure. But you might know that.
That does not sound familiar at all.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, I look it up and I don't see it actually. No. Nope. Nope. Okay. So no, we are keeping it to one person. One person a day. Okay, someone asked me if you could share a poem in Nigerian Pidgin English, and I said that we would have to pass on it because because at the end of the day I only speak two languages here. I only speak two languages, and English is the only one that we all share here. So we are going to avoid not exactly English. Wait, isn't this the poem you shared 2 days ago, Stephen? I remember this piece being actually read here, but we could go over it as critique, I guess. I guess we could do that. Who read it 2 days ago? Was it Daniel or Elaine? Ah, okay. Okay, so Elaine is going to read it this time because Daniel read it last time. Scary critique? Critique is never scary, Steven. Pidgin English just means any form of English that is sort of not like what do they call it? That there was British people who barely speak proper English. Cockney English is Pidgin English. Ebonics is Pidgin English, and yeah, the Jamaican Parto is probably also Pidgin. Like there are quite a few different Pidgin English versions. Okay, Elaine, take it away.
Okay, this piece, just did a quick read through. This piece is called Heaven by Stephen Wood. If you would like to read along, it is in the Steemitschool live class chat channel, posted there for you to open up, and I will begin reading in just a moment. Heaven. An ethereal light dances in the periphery of my vision. What can it be, I wonder, but can form no real decision? Is this the moment told to me by an angel in the past? Could it be I'm homeward bound and out of pain at last? Am I prepared to journey back to the place from whence we hail, when once, to cling on to my life, I'd have fought with tooth and nail? But now I'm so much older, I'm weaker now, you see. A life lived well behind me leaves me eager and ready. I'm coming home, my darling. I will see you once again. The years have made me love you more, but always I had pain. Our happy life together, by one shot, it was cut short. But now the time will soon be here, again, you'll be my port. It's not like how they tell you, 'bout life flashing by your eyes. All I see are the happy times, and each one draws more sighs. For the hour's almost here now, rapt anticipation grows, a wondrous sound beside me, and a soothing golden glow. My ailments forgotten, my rapture is here, I notice not the pain, a majestic harp's crescendo like sunshine after rain. The sight before my eyes, I can't believe it's true. I am being led back home by you.
And now we'll take a minute to read it in quiet. Steven, don't write anything. You are going to wait until we are done with our critique before you will get your chance to say anything. Okay, let the so-called scary critique commence. Who wants to go first? Alain, do you wish to?
Yeah, that's no problem.
Go ahead.
The first thing I'm going to mention real quick is that everybody, especially if you're writing in rhyme and with a particular meter, read your pieces out loud to yourself. And if at all possible, have somebody else read them out loud to you. There's a lot of places here where the punctuation works well, and there's a lot of places where it doesn't. And there's also a lot of places where the meter works well, and there's a lot of places where it doesn't. I'm going to just kind of highlight a couple of quick instances. First off, that last line, which you've tied a meter, whether consciously or subconsciously, through most of this piece. There's a few places where it was staggering, and you can read through and find those for yourself. But the last line in particular was, as a reader, really difficult because of how much it bucked from your meter. And I understand that there's times where you want to do that in order to draw attention, and the last line is usually a really good instance of that. But here it was really abrupt in a way that was distracting from, I think, the meaning that you're trying to impart. I think periods would really help this piece. I understand a lot of people don't necessarily want periods in poetry, but you have a period in your third stanza at the end. So that would make me think that you do use periods when they're necessary, and there's a lot of places where they're necessary here, and would really help your meter because they would give the right places for pause in the piece. The couple of instances where I think like your first stanza is by far your strongest for me as far as your meter and your rhyme goes. There's a few places where I was really put off by your rhyme because it seemed like they were there just for the purpose of having rhyme. One of them was you had the C and the ready, but you also had me as an internal rhyme on that fourth line of your second stanza, and that was really difficult to read because it really sets you away from the meter that you've created with your end rhymes. Not to say that internal rhymes are bad, but in this instance, especially with the one monosyllabic rhymes, it was really just kind of a point of difficulty. Again, in pain, this could just be a English pronunciation thing again for Americans, because I think you were from the UK, if I remember right. So maybe I just pronounce it differently, but that was, for me, a slant rhyme that was difficult with all the hard rhymes for everywhere else that you had, and also didn't necessarily fit the metering in that kind of quick couplet. And I think that's just from the kind of reading perspective, my quick high-level notes. Some of your thoughts I really loved. I thought your metaphor about where you're coming to port, so it's this metaphor of extended metaphor of coming home from a long journey, was a nice tie-in to your thoughts of what heaven and visiting the lost love would be. There was a few places where I felt that you got away from the importance of the journey of almost pursuing death in a way, in order to, I guess, pursuing life after death would be more apt. And I'll have notes on that for you when I get another chance to kind of like quickly skim through. But hopefully that is helpful. Just some quick thoughts from a reader.
Just before you leave, where do you see gain? I see pain, but pain rhymes with rain here. Ah, again and pain. Okay. How do you say it, Elaine? Just say it. Again, pain.
Yeah, again, pain.
Okay.
So they're
Yeah,
yeah.
British people don't say again. So no matter what Steven might try to convince you of. Okay, because we started late and I do want to cover one last thing after this poem, I will go now. Apologies to everyone else who wanted to give Steven feedback, but since this poem was actually read 2 or 3 days ago, he did receive some accolades, so now it's time for the whip crack, as they keep saying in chat. Gentle chiding. Okay, first of all, if you go for end of line rhymes, you have to go for end of line rhymes. I do not think that the C and me is acceptable in this case, because you have lines that are broken with commas in the center, which are really long. Like, I'm now going to read the first 2 lines in the second stanza. Am I prepared to journey back to the place from whence we hail? When once to cling onto my life, I'd have fought with tooth and nail. These 2 lines are just too long for a rhyme. There's just no other way to say it. If you actually, like, a rhyme isn't just there to be seen, it's there to be heard. It's there to be, it really is. And when we actually have to read something like 14 lines from the last word of a prior line, that's not really rhyming, is it? Like, that loses the whole cadence and meter of a rhyme. So I don't like that. I'm surprised Elaine didn't point out the worst comma you have, which is in the first line of the final stanza. I'll read it to you as you wrote it. My ailment's forgotten, my rapture is here. I notice not the pain. And you can tell that it's really bad. It should be, I notice not the pain. This is one sentence. Even like if you wanted to draw it out, you could go for I notice not the pain, but there should be no commas here at all. And going about punctuation, which Elaine mentioned earlier, if you are willing to have commas in the middle of the lines, there is no reason for me to accept that there are no commas at the end of lines where they belong. Like, if you want to have commaless, to just have each line end with a comma and then just not use those commas, it's fine. But as Elaine said, basically most of your lines are actually two lines. You try to cram it in, and you know what? You don't have to have quatrains. You could have had each stanza be to be 8 lines and have each other line actually rhyme, and I think it would have read better, both from a reader's perspective and from someone reading it out loud perspective, and it would have looked better. I don't like the all capitalized U at the end, unless it is supposed to mean that it's God. You are missing quite a few possessive apostrophes in the piece, like a majestic harps crescendo. It's the majestic harps that has the crescendo. So, and there are a couple other instances in the piece. I do like this talking of, I do like the whole thing about the pain, the growing old, and going back to meeting a loved one. I think, like, as with Elaine, I think actually the image and the metaphor, there's not much for me to go over here like now. I'm sure like that if I've edited in a Google Doc, I would have found like a word here or there or something. But by and by, I think this piece mostly needs structural and not in the meaning sense reworking. Like if you just split up all those lines and don't worry so much about the stanzas being the same length, and rework all the problematic punctuation, because there's actually quite a bit, I think it would be better. And there's interesting thing here. Our happy life together by one shot, it was cut short. That line is a bit wonky in its structure, but it also speaks to the one thing I'm unsure about with the meaning, because you can read it as if the speaker is a soldier that was in pain because he died now in the war, and then it makes you wonder why he's meeting his love again. But as you keep reading, it's probably the case that she died because she was shot, and now he has gone older without her, and now they are meeting again. Yes, that site is also misspelled. That was something I came across while I've read, but again, I don't actually want to dwell on grammatical issues because there are quite a bit in this piece as well, and I actually don't think it is conducive for this class to dwell on grammatical issues when grammatical issues are relatively easy to fix elsewhere by just having someone go over your piece again. It's not something that you actually need a critic for. Okay, so now that we are done with the poems, there's something I want to open up. I'm going to read something by Daniel, our very own deep end. Give me a moment to find it, because I'm a bad boy, so I didn't find it in advance, but I knew I want to speak about it. Okay, I found it. This is in a comment chain between me and Daniel on his poem from a few days ago. It is called I Am Sorry About This. I'm linking to the last comment in the chain, and I will reply again, but I'm going to read from the last stanza. For me, this is Daniel's comment, but I'm going to read it for him because I want to speak. For me, one of the unexpected results of receiving critique is that it causes me to care much more about a piece. When I wrote this, it felt very silly, bad, or inconsequential. I actually have that feeling a lot of the time creating art. Part of that is genuine emotion of feeling free to create, unaffected by results, etc. But part of it seems to be a psychological defense mechanism that I convince myself I do not care deeply, but I actually do. So Elaine is saying that Daniel is all apologies, and if you have listened to prior classes or read some of my critique to him, including at the start of this chain, one of the things I tell him is that he has to stop apologizing. But he has to be happy and sure of himself and to not apologize. Like you can't write poetry while constantly apologizing. Because writing, and especially if you publish, is about making yourself heard. And to apologize is saying, I should not be heard, I should not be listened to. So, but what I want to ask Daniel at the start, like, this is a rhetorical question, so don't answer, is if you feel that you don't care about a piece, then why do you share it? Why should we care enough to read it? Because like when I mostly tell people who receive critique from me that they should actually have all the grammatical issues ironed out first, because my time is precious, and if you want your editor to feel as if you actually appreciate the time they take, then you should go as far as you can on your own before you come to them, which also for me includes trying to go over your grammar. So what I want to ask Daniel is, and also Elaine, because Elaine also told me before and then everyone else who wishes to, please tell us what you feel receiving critique gives you. And part of the reason I want to go over it is because I'm trying to convince people here not to just receive critique, but to give critique to others. So let's hear from some people, starting with Daniel and then Elaine, what they feel critique has given them, specifically in the case of poetry. Go ahead, Daniel. And yes, I'm putting you guys on the spot. Consider this payback or payment.
Okay, you want me to speak, not write it.
Yes, because
Okay.
this is recorded.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, it's easier anyway. The main thing that I've noticed is it makes me, and I've heard other people say this as well, especially for people that maybe not as experienced, like if you've only been writing for a few years, not decades or something like this, or even if you have. It makes you feel more like a writer, first of all. It kind of like affirms or validates that, oh, I guess I am a writer. You know, I studied music. I always did writing somewhat, just flippantly, like, oh, this is something that is fun that I do. But it gave me more of a sense that my piece matters in a sense to other people, not just to myself, perhaps, that it might have other, value to other people, and it might have value. It gave me a sense of longevity to kind of this craft, and it puts it in a different light. And as far as giving critique, I'm pretty unexperienced, but I've done it in these classes, and then I did go and give my first inexperienced, pardon me. I did give my first long critique in a comment to Yahia, and when I did that, on one of the pieces that I really enjoyed of his, it made me appreciate the piece so much more. It made me understand the piece so much more, and it made my mindset more clear the next time I began writing, and it was awesome. So that's what I'd have to say for now.
Elaine, please.
Yeah, I not just receiving critique, but I will say what I kind of touched on yesterday, which is that giving critique often can help you figure out what you value in your writing in a lot of different ways, both in showing you kind of new places to explore or experience, because you become an active reader who is really trying to figure out not just what something says, but why. And also because you become someone who is evaluating the strengths of certain techniques, word uses. I mean, a lot of times I think that a piece, even a word change, might be able to bring a lot of strength to a poem, especially when it's shorter. So just to be more mindful and in your writing, I think is going to just make you so much better of a writer. And a really good way to achieve that, like Daniel was saying, is through not just giving critique, but also receiving it. So the biggest value is hopefully you become more mindful in your writing process and your editing process, and you begin to leverage the different voices of not just writers that you read, but also the voices of critiquers that you have heard and that you find weight in, and you add those to your repertoire of what you evaluate when you're writing and editing your pieces. So I think it's just one of the best ways that you can possibly grow as a writer.
But I actually want for you to speak more about what you receive and what you get, what you personally get and appreciate, and how it helps you when you receive critique.
More than anything in the world, As far as my poetry goals, I'm not writing to be, I'm not writing for myself. It's a big part of it, but being read is like the biggest honor. That somebody would take a moment of their time to read my piece means the most to me. Read my poems means the most to me. Then to have somebody go that extra mile and comment on what they liked, what they didn't like, what they saw as strengths, what they saw as weaknesses. Like for me, there's nothing in my poetic goals that's means more to me. It's one of the reasons why I like moved away from trying to be published and things like that, because it didn't matter as much as just being able to have that open dialogue. So hopefully that means more to what you were saying, Guy. But I just love having that dialogue with other writers or with other readers, just to talk about kind of the thoughts and what we put forward.
So, but like if I would continue this as a dialogue, then just a couple more minutes, Dobartim. So how does it differ for you though? Like, because editing is not the same as a reader coming to your piece afterwards. Like, and like if anyone wants to actually speak on this matter, because this is like what you are describing could be heard by anyone coming to your piece even after you publish it, right? So what do you feel an editor gives you?
Clarity of thought would be my number one answer. I hope that no is not to me, but editors and an active reader that challenges what you're doing something and why you're doing something is big, because a lot of times you're filling in the blanks as a writer, and you are subconsciously, I mean, you know what you're trying to say and what you're trying to write about, so you fill in the blanks. And a lot of times it's very difficult, no matter how long you've been doing it, no matter how much practice you have, to separate what your mind knows it wants to be saying and what you are actually saying. And having an editor and somebody who you trust step in and say, no, this isn't achieving that, is huge. Even hearing something like, this is what I think this means, can mean a lot to a writer, because hopefully they have a very clear intention of what that is supposed to achieve, what that stanza is supposed to mean. So to hear a reader say their interpretation of it allows you to see if you achieved your goals, at least to that reader. So these are my words to that. Daniel, if you want to add.
Or anyone wants to add? Like Tiger or Hazem, who received critique from us in weeks past. What do you...
I'd like to ask, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I received critique a few weeks ago, and for me, it was awesome. I mean, I was able to go back to my piece and actually put practical things that I had gotten insight and fix things. I mean, that's my number one thing when I get editorial advice, is I want to see if it makes sense to me, and if it wants to elicit a change and it makes sense to make that change, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And I did that. After we got done with that class, I went and fixed some things in my piece. So for me, that's what it gives.
Thank you, Steve. And
I just want to say that I hear you in my head now. Like when it comes to making, like, just because you like when you you're very like explicit about how you think that imagery should be. And like when it comes to imagery now, like you're the little voice in my head, like, this does not work in reality. Feet do not stand, arms do not stand, or something like that, and I hear you like that. So, and I actually think it's fun. It's good, because you've made me more, look more at imagery so that it's consistent, which, I guess subconsciously I did, but now I'm looking at it more consciously.
yeah, Steven asks, imagery is surely personal, and I say, like, I probably should apologize for this, because it sounds as if like you're now writing my poetry, but I think what Tiger actually means is that she's actually looking not just at the structural integrity of her grammar, but at the structural integrity of her imagery across the piece and across a stanza, not specifically that she's writing my imagery.
No, I'm not writing his imagery, but as
Yeah.
he said, it's just, you know, like I've become more conscious. My writing has always been more subconscious. It's like I do it with feeling and it comes out right, usually my imagery, but I've never been really conscious about how it actually all fits or if it even fits. And since he said this stuff, I like, as I said, I hear him like in my head, like, you know, poking me saying, nah, do you think this works?
Okay.
Yeah, and just if I could chime in one more thing on what Alain was saying that I didn't mention is yeah, I think that the excitement that he mentioned is one of the parts of it. Like I really felt, it seems like I'm exaggerating, but I actually felt exhilarated whenever I got to respond to Guy's critique live last class. It made me feel so energized. And what I mean about caring more about a piece is that these pieces that I will feel are a little weaker or not completely there, when I get critique on them, I'm able to refine them to the point to where I feel about them how I would feel about one of my natural strongest pieces. And I'm actually end up feeling more proud of them because there's more work and thought put into them rather than them kind of just flowing out naturally. And and what Tiger said, I now hear different people's voices from this class and their opinions kind of coming into my mind about when I'm writing different things, like Alain's way of thinking with writing, Guy's way of thinking, Tiger's, Steve, like especially the people that speak more. So I do want to encourage you, just speak and put your opinion across, because it's very fascinating and we can't actually get that viewpoint if you don't speak up. And get rid of excuses like I'm not good at English, you know, my opinion doesn't matter. Get rid of those thoughts, because it really helps if you'll be brave enough to speak up.
I want to talk about editors and what they are. For me, it's a friend, because I mean, a real true friend will not only prop you up, but they'll point out where you need to grow, and that an editor's kind of like a business partner as well, because they're helping you develop yourself. And if you look at yourself as a brand, I mean, that's a business partner right there. So for I not had an editor very much. So this is awesome. Anytime I can get it, it's like, wow, I have a friend. I have a business partner. So it's really cool.
Thank you, Steve. And before we finish class, because we are a bit over time, I just want to remind everyone that wants to actually receive critique in next week's class, you will have to leave a comment of critique on someone else's poem this week. It doesn't have to be someone who is part of this class or even part of a challenge, but if you wish to get critique next week, between today and next Wednesday, you have to leave a comment of critique in public on someone's piece. Doesn't matter how old it is, and yes, you will need to link me for me to actually okay you receiving critique next week. And if nobody actually does it, then we'll all be reading and critiquing my poems, because I've surely left enough comments to fit. So have a nice evening, everyone, and happy second Passover to the Jewish ones amongst us, and have a good night.